It is just to ding straight up at 9 o'clock, and I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Building and Operating Committee meeting of Thursday, May 22nd. But before we begin, please note that this meeting is being recorded. Welcome to all who are joining us here in person, as well as those listening in on the phone. If you would like to provide public comment at today's meeting, and if you've not already done so, please let Thomas in the back of the room or Justine on the call-in line what items you would like to speak to today. Madam Secretary, please begin by calling the roll.
Thank you. Starting with Director Devlin.
Here.
Giudice.
Here.
Maston.
Here.
Parr. Is absent. Rapid.
Here.
Vice Chair Rodoni.
Here.
Chair Garbarino.
Here.
And President Cochran.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum. You are not a committee of the whole. Also in the room is Director Hill. If you become a committee of the whole, I'll let you know.
Good deal. Thank you, Amarette. Please follow along by referring to the page numbers located on the bottom right-hand corner of your meeting packet. We begin with agenda item number 3, which is to approve actions relative to the Golden Gate Suspension Bridge seismic retrofit pre-construction. The staff report begins on page 3 once again. And John is here to present the report. John, go right ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Garbarino, members of the committee. It's going to be kind of a long item, so bear with me when I walk you through this. So the item before you requests that you recommend that the Board of Directors approve the following actions relative to Project 1923, Golden Gate Suspension Bridge seismic retrofit pre-construction. Authorize execution of the Second Amendment to Professional Services Agreement number 2023 B15, Golden Gate Suspension Bridge seismic retrofit CMGC pre-construction services with Hallmark International LLC in an amount not to exceed $2,237,868 for continuation of construction manager, general contractor pre-construction services. Authorize execution of the Second Amendment to PSA number 2023 B42, Golden Gate Suspension Bridge seismic retrofit ICE services with Leland Sailor Associates in an amount not to exceed $738,505 for continuation of independent cost estimator pre-construction services. Authorize execution of the 16th Amendment to PSA number 2010 B1, Golden Gate Suspension Bridge seismic retrofit design services with HDR Engineering in an amount not to exceed $862,486 for continuation of engineering design services to finalize the design documents and pre-construction services for the Golden Gate Suspension Bridge seismic retrofit. Authorize a $5,568,659 increase to be funded with district reserves in the fiscal year 24-25 Bridge Division capital budget for Project 1923 to finance the estimated $3,838,859 in cost for consultant services and the estimated $1,729,800 in cost for district staff and other expenses required to develop the final construction documents and the project construction pricing schedule for a total project budget of $25,643,934. Through page 1. So a little background. By Board Resolution 2018-049, the Board of Directors approved the use of construction manager, general contractor, construction project delivery methods. That's a new methodology. The state allowed the district to utilize for bridge construction projects. And then in 2019, by Board Resolution number 2019-23, Board authorized the establishment of this Project 1923, which is a Golden Gate Suspension Bridge seismic retrofit pre-construction project. So, as we've mentioned before, the CMGC process allows the owner to engage a contractor to be engaged during the project design stage. It allows collaboration between the owner, the designer, and the contractor to work together to better understand the scope of the project, to develop construction plans and specification, and then work on a construction price so that all parties understand the project and they go in with their eyes open and not do a typical design bid build project where you wait for the envelope to be open and receive the bid. The arrangement allows for collaboration, allows for greater understanding between the parties, and the goal is to both come to an understanding on price, to avoid future claims, and to minimize or at least better manage change orders as they develop. This project is also under the California Department of Transportation, Caltrans, and Federal Highway Administration FHWA oversight for compliance with applicable state, federal laws, rules, and regulations because of the federal funding participation project. So the implementation of the project pre-construction phase, which is what this project is, will conclude with establishing a final construction cost and schedule. And it involves the participation of a number of team members. They are the CMGC consultant, the ICE consultant, the design engineering consultant. We have project technical review panel consultants, FHWA and Caltrans oversight staff, and then the district project management and contract administration staff. So February 23rd, 2024, the board authorized a number of actions. Entering into a contract with Hallmark to be the CMGC, entering into a contract with Leland Saylor Associates to be the ICE consultant, executing a contract amendment with the design consultant, HGR Engineering, participate in the CMGC process, finalize the design and specifications for the project, and then a notice to proceed for these three contract and amendment was issued in March 2024. And since that time, the team has been working from the 90% design, which was established at that time, to come to a 95% design and work toward a final contract construction price. After going through the 90% level design, reviewing site records, performing site reviews, participating in technical review meetings with team members, discussing all of the details, Hallmark developed their means and methods and access plans for performing the work. Access is a key to this project. As you all are aware, there's not a lot of existing access platforms on the bridge. So in order to perform the work, the contractor has to develop a pretty elaborate system to get both materials, personnel, and equipment onto the job at the location. After submission of their preliminary means and methods plan, they developed a construction cost model, and that is for developing the opinion of probable cost. So each of the parties develops their own independent opinions of probable cost based on the contractor's proposed means and methods. So the three parties did their own independent quantity takeoffs, their own independent production rates, their own individual bid item amounts. They all submitted their opinion of probable cost based on the 90% design. And when we all reviewed it, we determined that the amount greatly exceeded the project budget that was established back in 2022. So engineering staff and the design consultant reviewed the three independent cost estimates and compared it to the previous budget cost estimate. And a portion of it was determined to have increased due to inflation. A portion was determined to have increased due to some scope creep, additional scope. But the largest cost increase was determined to be for the estimated amount to clean and paint the structural steel on the bridge. It's required when we're retrofitting. We have to clean the existing paint system off, create a new surface where the mating two pieces of steel made together. And there's over 1.5 million square feet of surface area that needs to be cleaned and painted. So Cal OSHA issued new regulations that went into effect January 1st, 2025 to impose new rules on employers of workers who are exposed to occupational lead. The new regulations decrease the permissible exposure for workers by 80% and lower the action level for lead by 93%. The new regulations also appear to reduce the number of hours each day that workers may perform abrasive blasting on steel surfaces. So we were basing our estimate on the previous regs. The new regs come into effect, and no one has really been working under these regulations yet. So there's great uncertainty in how much it's really going to cost employers. It's not just painters; it's also iron workers and other craft people due to the permissible exposure limits being reduced. So those were the reasons why the cost increase were much greater than anticipated. And as I noted, FHWA is a partner on the project. For projects of this size, they mandate that the project be evaluated through a cost and schedule risk assessment workshop. This is a FHWA-led workshop, and they do a probabilistic methodology for determining a project's cost. This started after, I don't know if people remember the Big Dig in Boston, where there were large cost overruns on the project. And so FHWA wanted to try and use a different methodology so that everyone is aware of what project realistically is going to come in at. So we went through this workshop, and the results of that workshop were in line with our consultants' opinion of probable cost. The amounts were almost exactly the same, actually, which greatly exceeded the amount budgeted for the project. So the funding that we have from our partners is set, so the district would have been the entity that would have to make up the difference in the financing. And the district does not have sufficient funds to finance the construction as currently contemplated. So engineering staff and the design consultant investigated ways to reduce scope, make details easier to talk to the contractor, Hallmark, the CMGC, look at ways to lower the cost. And we did look into some measures, but determined that these alone would not produce enough savings to have the project still come in within the construction budget. So we consulted with FHWA and Caltrans, and FHWA stated that the district may consider breaking the project into phases of independent utility. This is similar to when the district originally contemplated the original retrofit program. We had a phase 1, which was the North Approach Viaduct, and phase 2, phase 3A. So they said that we could investigate that, and we did. And we determined that we could have independent utility by breaking it into 2 more phases. One phase would retrofit the 2 main towers, the south side span and the north side span, and then another phase would retrofit the main suspension span. So the project team determined that in order to stay within our budget, to go ahead and investigate that phasing. So with that, the phasing is going to require drawings be modified, specifications be modified, and that the opinion of probable cost for breaking it into this phase would have to be redone. So that comes to the recommendation. So as stated above, the board authorized a PSA with Hallmark to perform as the CMGC for the pre-construction services. And they've been working on their scope of work since that time. The original complexity of the project and the review time going through the project plans, doing site visits, coming up with innovation requests, and then the design consultant modifying details and doing an investigation to determine if those innovations could occur took longer than originally contemplated. And now, in addition, with this estimated new phasing, it will require additional time and effort to complete the CMGC pre-construction services. And there's listed everything in here of what they're going to have to go through. So engineering staff requested that Hallmark provide a cost proposal for performing the additional scope of work as listed in the document. Engineering staff reviewed the cost proposal and we negotiated a price with Hallmar in the not to exceed amount of $2,237,868. We investigated that against their budgeted hours to perform the scope of services. We find it consistent with their previous labor rates and overhead billing rates. They will be compensated for actual time expended and direct expenses for the not to exceed authorized amount. The contract has no disadvantaged business enterprise goal for the CMGC pre-construction services, and the district's DBE program office has determined that Hallmar is not an SBE or a DBE, so there will be no DBE participation for the Second Amendment work. So staff recommends that the Building and Operating Committee recommend that the Board of Directors authorize the execution of the Second Amendment to PSA number 2023 B15 with Hallmar International, the not to exceed amount of $2,237,868 to finalize the pre-construction services as presented in the staff report. And there's a table which at the end of the report which shows the accounting of the PSA to date. Are similar to the CMGC services, the ICE services will have to also be amended for this additional work. So their contract, again, was authorized by resolution number 2024-009, and the initial amount of $1,514,263. They too have been progressing with their ICE services, but they too will have to perform additional services in order to get to through the pre-construction phase and get to the final construction costs. So staff requested from LSA that they provide a cost estimate to continue these services through the end of this calendar year. We staff have reviewed their cost and negotiated price for the services in the not to exceed amount of $738,505, which we find to be reasonable in terms of their budgeted hours to perform the scope of services. It's also consistent with their current labor and overhead billing rates. LSA will also be compensated for actual time expended. The DBE office has determined that LSA is a small business enterprise, and so 100% SBE participation is anticipated for the performance of the Second Amendment to the PSA with LSA. The staff recommends that the Building and Operating Committee recommend that the Board of Directors authorize the Second Amendment to PSA number 2023 B042 with Leland Saylor and Associates, a not to exceed amount of $738,505 to finalize the pre-construction services as presented in the report. Table 3 lists the accounting of the LSA PSA to date. Then the design services are being performed by HDR. So as stated previously, Resolution 2024-009, the Board authorized execution of the 14th Amendment with HDR, the not to exceed amount of $5,543,833 for engineering design services to finalize the project construction documents, assist the district in establishing the construction price and schedule for the project during the pre-construction phase. HDR also has been diligently working on their task since the notice to proceed. They completed progressing from a 90% to a 95%. They must now, however, go from that 95% and break it into phases, adjusting the plans and also the specifications for the phase work. So engineering staff requested from HDR their cost proposal for the scope change as presented above. They presented a cost proposal in a not to exceed amount of $862,486. Staff finds to be reasonable in terms of HDR's budgeted labor hours to perform this scope of services. It's also consistent with HDR's audited labor and overhead rates. HDR also will be compensated for actual time expended and expenses incurred, plus a fixed fee for the not to exceed. The district's DBE office determined that a DBE participation of 6.1% is associated with the work under the 16th for a subcontractor to HDR. Staff recommends that the Building and Operating Committee recommend that the Board of Directors authorize the execution of the 16th Amendment, PSA number 2010B1, with HDR Engineering Incorporated, the not to exceed amount of $862,486 to finalize the project construction documents and to assist the district in establishing the construction price and schedule for the project during the pre-construction phase. Table 4 presents an accounting of the PSA with HDR. Finally, district engineering staff has been engaged in performing a number of services during the pre-construction phase, as listed in the report, participating in project teams, reviewing deliverables by the project team members, coordinating permits, finalizing project risk register, administering contracts. As a result of the additional time associated with completing the pre-construction services, will be necessary for an increase in the budget for administration staff. In addition to the staff cost, the district has a temporary office lease for project team meetings where we get together to go over both technical and pricing reviews. That has lease we had to extend, and there's a cost increase associated with that. In addition, we have a engineering software where all parties are able to put their documents together so that we collaboratively may work on it, and there's a cost associated with extending the software through the end of the pre-construction services. So we've developed an analysis of the level of effort necessary through the end of 2025, a budget of $1,594,887, of which $1,143,124 is for district staff labor, $451,763 is for indirect costs. Increase in the temporary office lease, $70,913, and an estimated increase of $64,000 for another year of the document control system software that we've been utilizing. Recommendation of funding to complete the project pre-construction phase. The total cost to increase to complete the second stage of the pre-construction phase is estimated at $5,568,659. This includes the CMGC, ICE, design consultant, engineering staff, and all other costs that may be incurred as presented in Table 1 of the report. So staff recommends that the Building and Operating Committee recommend that the Board of Directors approve $5,568,659 increase to Project 1923 budget, which would provide for CMGC, ICE, design consultant, engineering staff, and all other costs that may be incurred to complete this phase as presented in the report. And then in the fiscal impact, as noted, the total project budget will increase from $20,075,275 to $25,643,934. Will be funded with $15,575,523 federal funds, $10,068,411 district funds. And with that, I'm available to answer questions you may have.
Thank you, John, for your comprehensive, massive, and stellar report. Are there any questions of John or comments from my colleagues? Yes, go ahead, David.
John, thank you for that. Thanks for all the work. Phasing comes with additional costs, and I'm just wondering if we kind of burrowed in on those with breaking up the work into phases, the soft costs, the mobilization, and the vulnerability, of course, to increase costs the longer the jobs go. Did we look at, and I know you can't look at the last one, but we know it's going to happen. Did we look at any of those things? Just curious.
We are looking at that. We're trying to keep this within our original budget that we have for the project. With the total project, the total budget that we were looking at was approximately $1.8 billion. This project is approximately 900,000 of that, 900 million, sorry, 900 million versus the 1.8 billion. So you could get an idea of what the delta is for the next phase. But as you mentioned, with there's going to be increases due to inflation because the project next phase is going to be able to occur until we do get the funding for that, and there will be probably increases due to the mobilization and the additional setup. But we haven't gone through a thorough analysis of what the future cost would be. And currently, the way FHWA is requiring us to invest, to look at this project, we're going to be using that $1.8 billion number for the total project, and then we'll phase it using what comes out of our next OPCC 2 number for this phase, which is approximately within our original budget of the $870 million.
I appreciate that. And then I guess my other question really has to do with so we're breaking into phases. Did we break it into phases based upon what was quote unquote convenient for the construction, or what was going to give the bridge the biggest seismic upgrade?
What would give the bridge the biggest seismic upgrade?
Great.
So we're completing the 2 side spans, which when we did the analysis and looked at the demand to capacity ratios under a seismic event, the most vulnerability is on the side spans versus the main spans.
Yeah.
And also the towers themselves. So the towers are included in the first phase, and then the side spans, because those are more vulnerable relative to the main span.
So some of the things that are not would be the stiffening members underneath the main deck. Is that
correct?
That's
correct. So the main suspension bridge work would be the bottom lateral retrofit and the top lateral replacement. That's the primary amount. And since it's such a large span, the 4,200 feet, the number of floor beams, and paint associated with that is much greater than the 2 side spans. And then at the interface where we put the energy dissipation devices, there's more of those in the side spans than there are in the main spans. So it will provide more protection to get the side spans done, the tower done first.
And this may be off the wall, but is there any way to do a phase project where you can actually do one phase with an alternate instead of actually having it broken in half entirely? I'm just thinking about locking in a price early on, controlling some of those costs early on, not having it come back out years and years later when things might be radically different. Or is the number so large that
I think the number is so large that we would have to have a funding plan in place to do that. And that's the
funding plan. Are the cars going through right now? Aren't they? Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Just thought I'd ask. Thank you.
Anyone else with questions, comments? Oh, sorry, Barb.
Thank you, John. That was probably more information than I could handle at 9:00 in the morning. But the bottom line on it, and I appreciate the fact that you've gone back to the table over and over and over to try to keep the costs down. What I'm looking for from my point of view is Jennifer nodding that money is okay. Because just generally it's about, 20% more?
For the phasing?
Than the original cost of these services.
You're talking about the design services, right?
Right.
Right.
Just to get started.
Right. Yes. So I guess let me ask your question again. You're correct. It's about 20% more for this, but as far as do we have funds to do this phase? Yes, we do.
I want to hear Jennifer. I want to see Jennifer nod. Joe always said,
I know.
Joe always sat back there and nodded. If he didn't nod, you knew you needed to keep asking. Thank you, both of you.
For this phase. Any other questions or comments? Directors, no. That concludes our discussion. Thank you again, John, on item number 3. But before we take our vote, is there anyone from the public that is wishing to speak on this item?
No, we have no speakers for the public on this item.
Thank you. May I have a motion on agenda item number 3?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. And
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Let the record show there is no opposition and the motion passes.
That was a motion to approve.
Yes. Did I miss that, Jim?
No,
Got it. Thank you, Jim. I know.
I missed it.
No, it was overwhelming and a great presentation. Yeah.
Well.
So, we now get to continue on to item number 4, which is to authorize execution of the third amendment to contract number 2016 MD01, janitorial service. Staff report begins on page 19, and Mike Hoffman is here to present the report. Mike, we're handing things over to you now.
Thank you, Chair Gabrino. I think I can make this a little bit shorter. Good morning, members of the board. Today I'm here to request that this committee recommends that the board of directors execute a third amendment to contract number 2016 MD01 for janitorial service supporting our Larkspur Ferry Terminal and ferry vessels. The original contract was awarded in 2016 following a competitive procurement under RFP number 2016 MD01. It included a 3-year base term. It had 5 one-year options that were executed at the district's discretion. We've exercised all our options in the current term, and we've had a couple different, 2 different amendments that prior to this amendment we're asking the board to authorize that extended the contract to June 30th of 2024. So this third amendment extends the contract through December 31st of 2025 of this year, and it adds $50,000 in funding. It brings the total not to exceed amount to $1,326,396.56. Currently, a new RFP is under legal review. We anticipate board consideration of a new award around October of this year. The amendment ensures uninterrupted janitorial services amid increased usage and demand to our ferry vessels. And with that, staff recommends that you recommend that the board of directors authorize the execution of this amendment. Stand by for any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues at the time? That then concludes the discussion on item number 4. But before we take our vote, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item?
We have no speakers on this item.
Thank you. May I have a motion on agenda item number 4?
So,
Second.
Second. Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? There is no opposition at this time. Let the record show. And Mike, that was also a comprehensive, massive, and stellar report. It's not so massive, but we will now move on.
The stellar, yes.
Yeah, stellar part. No other than. We'll continue on to agenda item number 5, which is an informal monthly report on board appointees, from board appointees on the Sonoma Marin Area Rail Transit Board. Director Parr, please begin with your report. You look just like Director Parr. Yesterday in a bar, I asked David.
was not I in the bar.
No. If he could give this report, and all of my notes for the report are in that brown thing over there, if you want to just wade through it, or give the report.
Wow. We had a lovely meeting. Smart Board met yesterday. We reviewed the budget for the second time. Actually, it'll be 3 times before we actually pass it, but we're balanced. We added a little money for marketing just to continue to publicize. We have a big date coming up on the 13th of June when Windsor Station opens up. That'll be a big celebration. We're also on track to hit a million passengers this year, and probably exceed that by some good percentage, hopefully. So that's a good thing. And we did talk about our ARM3 $40 million appropriation yesterday as well. And Healdsburg, believe it or not, 2028.
Yep.
So 25 for Windsor, 28 for Healdsburg. So things are going wonderfully. There's some of the pathway segments. There's one signal that is not cooperating to the coordination with the crossing arms. And unfortunately, the signals have a safety default to go to a flashing red light, which does not work well for railroad crossings because you don't want to stop and go. It has to be red. So they literally have been trying to figure out this one, and it's a county signal. So take the blame for that one. But I think they're well on their way to make the whole thing work and get it up and up. And so everything's going well. The bar was really, talking about the future of SMART and when it goes back out. And that's going well as well.
Obviously, because of our organization meetings in the barn. Like very well, but very healthy. I'm only grabbing my notes because I love to talk about the ridership increases, so I'll just briefly mention that. And thank you so much, David, for saving me. The monthly reports are from April. The increase over 2024 is 32%. The increase over 2019 is 76%. So I had to share that. That's huge for the little train that could, right, in Marin and Sonoma. Great report. Pathways is also up 46% over last year. And the Smart Connect at Larkspur to the ferry is seeing a huge increase, but that's kind of apples to oranges because it's now increased to 7 days a week from the original 5. So great stuff. Bob, did you want to add anything?
I didn't. I actually missed yesterday's because I had a wonderful visit from my son that I hadn't seen for
Yay.
3 months.
Oh, good.
I made a decision.
There you go. The right one.
There you go. Thank you. Are there any questions of us from our colleagues on this item? Seeing none, that concludes our discussion. But before we move on, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item?
No speakers from this item.
So as you all know, there's no action required. So we'll continue on to item number 6, which is the status report on engineering projects. That report begins on page 23, and John is back to give that report.
Hi, good morning again. My written report is before you. There are a few items I would like to bring to your attention. First, on the suicide deterrent project, they're continuing with their removal of the remaining interior travelers in span 1 and 2. You'll also see if you drive across the bridge, those white payments on the west sidewalk. They're doing the final painting of the west railing. They're finishing up with that. And then if you drive across and look, you'll notice that we removed the majority of the temporary security fencing that been out there for a long period of time. So we're happy to see that. With regard to the bridge electrical system project, the first shipment of the equipment and material for the initial repairs has arrived and located stored here on the bridge. We're waiting for a couple more switches and a transformer. We're finalizing the work plan to do that installation work. With regard to the Vista Point Trail project, that's the National Park Service and FHWA project that will move into the bridge. The contractor has completed installing all of the soldier piles for the retaining wall and commenced the installation of the wood between the soldier piles to construct those retaining walls. With regard to bridge inspection, the first 2 weeks of rope inspection have occurred, and the majority of the items that require the close-up inspections on the south side span of the suspension bridge have been completed. They'll be back in another month to continue with that work. And then I wanted to report that the solarization of the invasive vegetation at the Corte Madera restoration site is started up again for this summer, and that work is progressing well. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions. Any other questions on my report?
Thank you, John. Questions? Yes, Jen.
The electrical project, when do you think that'll be completed?
Well, as I mentioned previously, it's going to be 2 phases. There's an initial phase. That phase we hope to complete in about 2 months. And then the final will be the long-term phase. That will be a larger project. That'll be probably a year out before that gets completed.
All right. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Sabrina.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to ask you if you're seeing any of the effects of tariffs with regard to being able to access supplies and materials for the required projects.
Sorry, Tracy.
I'm wondering if there are any, if you're experiencing any difficulty accessing materials. What are you hearing in terms of the supply chain, specifically related to the electrical project, but also others in general? Thank you.
So on the electrical project, as I said, there's an interim project, and we thought it would take about a month to procure the equipment, and that's about what it did take to procure it. The long-term equipment, however, is stainless steel enclosures and has a lot more environmental protection to it. That there is like a 52-week lead time on some of that equipment, somewhere between 26 and 52 weeks, depending upon what it is. That has not gone down. We have another project in Nevada where we're looking for a switch, a temporary switch for emergency generator. The lead time is anywhere between 14 and 16 weeks for that equipment, and we haven't seen any decrease in the lead time for that. So for those types of components, there's still a long lead time.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you again, John. There's no action associated either with this item number 6. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item or address the committee under item number 7, which is public comment?
With no speakers on that item, just for this committee.
Okay, and with that, we've reached the end of our agenda. May I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Great, we've got 2 of them, so they both count. Hearing no objections, that concludes the meeting of the Building and Operating Committee. Thank you, colleagues. The time is 9:42.